Hi, Dr. Benjamin Benulis here. Been asked to speak about vitamin B12. So, vitamin B12 is chemically known as cobalamin, and there are several forms: hydroxycobalamin, methylcobalamin, cyanocobalamin. And it's a vitamin that's used primarily in two things in the body. The first is formation of red blood cells. So, if you don't have enough vitamin B12, you get something called megaloblastic anemia, where your blood cells, red blood cells, actually become too big and they can't carry oxygen well, and it leads to an anemia type problem. The other complication with a B12 deficiency is neurological issues that people can get numbness, tingling, and even paralysis from long-term and impaired brain function from long-term B12 deficiency. So those are the main two things. B12, there's a lot of misconceptions about where B12 comes from. People think that B12 only comes from animal foods, but the fact is that B12 is actually produced by bacteria. And these bacteria live in the soil, and they also live in your intestine. And so they live in the lower parts, like the bowels, the large intestine. And so most of the B12 that they create inside your body, you end up just excreting it before you can absorb any of it. But in ancient times, that would essentially go back into the soil. And so there's B12 in the soil. And so incidentally, it would get on food and stuff like that. Now we live in a very clean environment where we're constantly trying to kill bacteria. We see them as the enemy. And so it's very hard to get B12 in modern times. So what do? Well, mainly with animal foods and other foods, we fortify foods. So we add B12 to foods. With cattle, we actually inject the cattle with B12. So people think that like, oh, I'm eating meat, I'm getting B12 from the animal, from the cow. Well, the cow's supplementing, you're just supplementing indirectly because they're injecting the cow. So it's a subtle concept. And so, but if you are eating a vegan or vegetarian diet, I really recommend supplementing. There are a number of ways to do that. I personally prefer to get an injection once every few months. I think that's the best way to do it. There are sublinguals and sprays and things like that you can do, patches. I've done the patches, they're mildly effective, but I think the injections are the best way to go. Realize also that like a large number of meat eaters are B12 deficient too, and it's just really a consequence of the sterile world that we live in, which prevents a lot of infectious disease, but ends up causing a lot of chronic disease. So I really recommend that everybody get their B12 levels checked and supplement if necessary, which most of the time, most people do need to supplement.